morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, whichever part of the world and whatever time zone you are joining us from, welcome. Welcome to the Black Consciousness Festival's weekend of conversations about reparations, claiming what is rightfully ours, 185,435 days late and a trillion short. The Black Consciousness Festival is a global online platform for the commemoration, celebration, and the sharing of vital histories and stories that boost awareness and impact of the pride, power, and practice of people of African descent. Our inaugural year was the magical and historical 2020, where we curated a month of conversations and activities around topics of Black consciousness. Earlier in 2021, we had our youth festival, and now we are grateful that you're joining us for our weekend of conversations on reparations. The Black Consciousness Festival will be continuing the building of awareness around how each of us can take the necessary steps for restitution and reparation. We do need healing and repair. You can find more on the festival website, theblackconsciousnessfestival.com. You'll be able to see our entire schedule for this weekend. My name is Nadella Oya. And as part of the Black Consciousness Festival team, I'm humbled to introduce today's conversation with two giantly and phenomenally spirited human beings. Master writer and author Earl Lovelace wrote in his book, Salt, "The tragedy of our time is to have lost the ability to feel loss, the inability of power to rise to its responsibility for human decency." Today, we present our first in the series of conversations. Today's conversation is entitled A Grounding Conversation with Earl Lovelace, and my good friend and the festival director of the Black Consciousness Festival, Ms. Erica Ashton. Erica is a lot of things, you all. She is a magical human being. Most people know her as a human resource management professional and a lecturer. And when I say lecturer, she's not easy, y'all. She is a giant. She has over 22 years experience in the field of human resource management. She's an adjunct lecturer at the Department of Creative and Festival Arts at the University of West Indies in St. Augustine and the SBCS Global Learning Institute. She dealing with postgraduate, undergraduate certificates. She is a teacher, and she's more than a teacher of academics. She's a teacher of amazing life. She's taught me a lot. God bless her. I'm so grateful she's in my life. So we want to thank you all, our viewing audience, for joining us and tuning in on our Zoom webinar and Facebook live stream. Feel free to post anything you hear that touches you. Have questions for our conversation lead, Erica, and of course for our giant and our elder, Earl Lovelace. Make sure to tag us on Facebook and Instagram. We now join Erica and Earl for our grounding conversation. Enjoy.
Thank you, Nadella. It's
Right.
to hear you, Mr. Lovelace. Welcome to the Black Consciousness Festival and to this conversation. It is an honor.
Right.
If I were in your physical presence, I would be touching ground before you, and then I would ask your permission to give you a hug and dance with you. But in this virtual frame, I think I can do that. So I touch ground before you, honoring your lineage, honoring your life, honoring your presence here with us today. We are deeply grateful for this gift, the gift of your presence here with us. And I thank you. Thank you.
Good, well, thank you. Right.
So
I'm very glad to be here as well.
Great,
You know.
yes. So if you're ready to start, I'd like to invite you to open the conversation for us.
I think that Black consciousness is very important. And I was asked in a kind of way to say, well, what did I mean or think that Black consciousness was? And it seems to me what I'm saying is an awareness of Black history, Black struggle. It's almost a total awareness of Black people in terms of our living in this part of the world and what we need to do. I think the other part of it is, what do we need to do? One would assume that because you have so many Black people here that Black consciousness would be a given. But I don't know that it is exactly like that. People feel a little guilty of being Black conscious or are made to feel that way. And what is presented to stymie it, what is presented as coming up against it is multiculturalism. We would like to feel ourselves a multicultural society as opposed to a Black conscious society. And I think that therein lies some of the big problems. How do we see ourselves, or how are we made to see ourselves? What we're made guilty about and what we're made to feel is acceptable. We feel that, second point would be that we also feel that we can become anything. We think that it's easy for us to be anything. We could be Buddhist, Shauta, and Catholic, anything we want to be. Strangely, though, we don't ask that same question to everybody else. We don't say that, okay, you British person, be Orisha, you be Shango, and so on. The thing is that we have been trying to escape the whole business and the burden and responsibility of Black consciousness. And so it's in that sense, I think that we're very happy to be here to begin a discussion which has at its center Black consciousness.
Yes, yeah. So the center of it, as you say, is Black consciousness. What would you say, what does this mean for you? Because you talk about it generally, but for you, what does this mean when you hear the idea of Black consciousness?
Well, I think that Black consciousness for me has meant many things over the years. And in fact, Black consciousness has meant rebellion, revolution, what you call it, the Césaire and Fanon. It has meant many, many, many things, you know, at the same time. But what it has at its center is some attempt by Black people to reclaim self, right? And that's what I would say, you know, we are about.
Yeah, the attempt to reclaim self, and how does that look for you? Because as you're saying, we could be so many things. How does that look for you? This attempt to reclaim self.
Right. It is not, when I say to talk about reclaiming self, it is not as if I am talking about a movement that proceeds without opposition. It is a movement that is always opposed, has always been opposed. This is quite an interesting thing, that people have never been left to talk about what they mean by Black consciousness and how to reclaim self, you know. And that is part of the problem, that we have never been left to reclaim self. And it's always made to feel, you're always made to feel either guilty or responsible in some way, you know, for, yes, right.
But what is this self? Well, when you talk about reclaiming self, what is this self that you're referring to?
All right. Oh, right. I'm seeing myself. I'm not seeing you, actually.
Oh, you're not seeing me?
No. That's why. What? Okay, good. I'm seeing you now.
You're seeing me now? Okay, good. Yes.
Yes. Yes, you were asking.
Yeah, when you talk about reclaiming self, what is that self for you? Yeah.
What do I mean by reclaim self?
Yes.
Oh, right. Well, as we were saying at some point earlier, that animals are guided by instinct, and human beings are guided by culture. It is not something that you choose, but something that, as it were, has chosen you even before you're born, right? The question before us has been, what happens in a situation as ours when the culture that you're born into is degraded, is bypassed, you're presented as inferior, right? And so that you are asked almost or require of yourself, in order to be somebody, to be other than yourself. If you yourself, you're not good enough. So you have to be somebody else in order to be yourself. This has been a very serious question. You know, this has posed us, yes, this has been a very serious question. And this is what I would say we have to deal with, because we have to look to see what has been lost, if you want, and how we can reclaim.
And in your mind, what has been lost? I remember in an earlier conversation, you know, we'll talk about the struggles, but in your mind, what has been lost in this whole thing?
Well, I think sometimes you can look at it in terms of, you've lost self-confidence. You've lost the authority of being human within a group, as it were, you know. Yeah, I would say those are the principal things that you have lost. You have, I mean, I think that the way we could probably see better is we have to look at it. For example, as a Christian person, you're christened, you baptized, well, you could be baptized, you know how to treat people when they're married, how people are treated when they die, you know, what are the ceremonies involved, all of the stations in life. Now, every group of people have that automatically.
Yes.
But when yours is lost or taken away from you, you know, then you really don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
And the search of reclaiming self is also the search for understanding self. And what is self?
And what is self? Yeah.
You know, and also looking at the whole world and wondering what a strange place this must be now.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is self in this space? How do we find ourselves? How do we situate ourselves in this space? Yeah.
Right. And in addition to which, the people who manage to escape and are people who have changed. You know, the people who generally the people who have, if they came here as, let's say, Shango, or the people who are privileged or who are welcomed or who are, welcomed by the society in which we find ourselves, are those people who change, who belong now, they a Catholic or whatever, you know, I don't want to,
right,
you know,
so
the people who succeed are
yeah.
people who conform to the values and culture of the people who are oppressing them all.
Right. Okay, I hear. So they have moved away from their indigenous and their cultural moorings. That's what you would say.
Well, to say moved away, I mean, we say moved away to, you know, as if they have done this deliberately. They almost forced without knowing what has been happening, you know, on this path.
Yeah.
I was writing something and I was thinking about myself. where do I belong? You know, what group? And when I look at it, I could see that I was trying to decide where I belong, you know, instead of automatically belonging anywhere, you know.
Because when you raise the point about and I hear you when you say, you know, when I said they've moved away from, it seems as if they did it knowingly. So there's an unconsciousness with which we're operating.
Right.
How did you begin to build that awareness around the issues that we're talking about? How did you begin to build that consciousness so that, as you say, you were finding yourself in it? Yeah.
Right. I think that in my own case, I read a lot as a child, you know, more than I read now.
I think you're writing more now.
Yes. And the question was, what was the question again?
How did you raise your own consciousness?
Oh, right, yeah. I say there are many instances from that childhood, you know, that forced me to wanted to see who was I.
Yeah.
You know, we had a hymn book, for example, not hymn book, a song book called Negro Spirituals. And I grew up with my cousins and brother, and we all love to sing. In fact, one of the activities of children was singing.
Yes.
And I had a cousin who liked to sing, although he might know the words, he would put in his own words, and he would be singing. And there was one song, the Old Black Joe. And I found it had a nice tune, and we would be singing Old Black Joe. But then I also was aware of my grandfather, who was a black man. And in the Old Black Joe song, they say, "Oh, gone are the days when my heart was young and gay. Gone are my friends from the cotton fields away. Gone from this earth to a better land I know."
To a better land I know.
Right. I hear the gentle voices calling Old Black Joe. And then this is the line which says, "Master and Missy have long gone before me. Soon we shall meet on the bright and golden shore." So here was this person saying that the very people who had been oppressing him, or, well, however you put it, were his superior, Master and Missy had long gone before me. Soon we shall meet on the bright and golden shore. He was anticipating in the future a life of servitude, just as he's had in the present. I thought about these things, you know, and I realized that my grandfather couldn't be that person because of his own attitude and his own ways that, you know, that I observed. And so I think I began to think about, yes, I began to think about these things. And also I was a member of the library. I read all that I could see about Black people and so on at quite a young age, you know. So I was aware at an earlier point, I think, than most people. Yeah. And so that began a journey into myself or into my surroundings, you know, to find out, well, who was I and where going and where I come from, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if I answered you.
Where you are today, and as you're speaking, yes, you did, because as you're speaking, I'm thinking a lot of us don't have that, didn't have that knowledge, you know, that the older person there, and sharing through that means, and also, I suppose, being curious about what is around you, and, you know, the reading is what you're talking about. And I don't know how many of us do that kind of reading again, because we have so many distractions.
Right. And as a child, then you didn't have, you had to create your own amusement, if you want,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that was part of the story.
Yes. And so you build this idea around Black consciousness. I know we talked about in an earlier conversation, you know, we'll talk about the reparations thing, but I remembered we had talked about the levels of struggle and the ongoing struggles in this thing called Black consciousness. And we spoke to the cultural aspect of it, but you know, a bit. But could we talk some more about those struggles, what you see those struggles as being?
So I just want to say that same
The
thing
struggles around Black consciousness. I know I have to speak up. You know, in an earlier conversation, I know we talked about the levels of the struggle and the ongoing struggle. Yes.
Right. Well, I think that if we look around us, there's always been a struggle. Black people have always been struggling for freedom, liberty, justice, and so on, all from the moment they hit the ships. So we knew that people died in the waters. We knew that people were brought here enslaved and stuff like that. But we also know that there were people who had rebellions. And I at a certain point in my own journeying, if you want, I was aware that people, well, first of all, one was presented with the idea that Black people were slaves. I had the first idea.
Yeah.
And that is the sense in which I didn't see my grandfather as acting as a slave, if you want. So the whole notion of slave was something that I had to try to kind of find my way past.
Yes.
So instead of yes, I'm saying right. All right. Oh, right. That so that I began to talk about slave rebellions and slave resistance. But the fact is that slaves don't resist and rebel, given the definition that they present us. The slave is somebody who, this is your condition.
Yes.
Right? So I moved past, I had to move past that idea of slave as your own condition and look, the correct thing is enslavement, is that people were enslaved. Once you begin on that, you begin to see a different picture, really, because, yeah, but we've had it. I'm thinking how difficult it has really been for us, in the sense that I remember at the same time when Williams and James, for example, were talking about slave and Black consciousness. One of the things I think in somebody's lecture was the slave, where they talked about slave revolts. They talked also about Rome being, was it Rome as a city of
slaves?
when the labor was done by,
yes, by enslaved people or slaves.
Enslaved, right, or it was viewed as slave. And when I don't know if we really have thought about that a whole lot, but I don't know that when the prime minister or the person who the political advanced people would be presenting to us an ideal Greek city-state.
Right.
That's what they were talking about, Greek city-states. And they were talking about these Greek city-states where democracy was at its highest. Was a place where the labor was enslaved labor. And I don't know how, it is difficult to put these two things together.
Yes.
You know, what, you coming from a society of people enslaved, and you follow.
Yes, I'm following what you're saying, and then you're holding up this as the thing to aspire to.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I mean, one has. I have had to deal with both with my own discovery and and understanding of self, as well as what was happening around me and what was accepted around me. You know. So it was
So in that
difficult.
sense, then you would have been rebellious because you were not conforming to the accepted ways of seeing.
Right, right. Well, right. Yes. I think that in a kind of way, the rebels in our space don't seem to have, well, let me be careful here, right? Because I think the rebels in our space have a difficult time.
Yes.
A difficult time to be heard, a difficult time to be understood, and so on. Because I think that what has happened in our society is a situation where we have been encouraged to not want to rock the boat, to not want to rock the boat even in thinking through it, you know? And that has been part of our problem, if you want. And the other side of that is that if one generation fails, another generation, what am I saying here? I just
That's okay.
yeah.
Saying if one generation fails because we're not thinking, then
Right.
what happens with the other generation?
Right. And one of the things we have not had here is a re-examination of thoughts we had yesterday.
Yeah.
You see, one can understand why we could think certain things because of all kinds of reasons. Good. But one of the marks of, I suppose, a good citizen or good intellectual or whatever is to re-examine, to look at the thing again. And one of the things is that we haven't looked again at anything. Yeah, I mean, so it's almost like if you are now in a kind of that you never grow big enough to challenge and to take another look at what we were talking about. And I think that yes. All right.
So we continue then to live in a kind of, and I say quote unquote, safety, because we're not rocking the boat, we're not thinking outside the box, well, not even the box, outside the confines of what we've been told. So we continue then to be complicit in our own situation.
Right. Yes. And I think that because of that, we almost have a different, a lesser quality of life, a lesser quality of being, of engagement, with each other and so on. It's almost like we get not only get accustomed to, but we withdraw.
Yes.
Right. And we don't rock the boat again because we tried to rock it last year or 5 years ago and it didn't quite succeed. So we're not going to be rocking it again. Yeah. Do you see?
I see what you're saying, because and what I'm hearing too is that we don't have the conversations where we assess. So we rock the boat, we got some flack, we don't get back together and say, let's look at what happened when we rocked the boat. What worked, what didn't work, what can we do differently? Because you know what, we are going to continue rocking the boat. Yeah.
Right. Yes. So we kind of, but all of these things, I think that we still here.
We still here. We are still here.
Yeah. So I'm not saying all of this to dismiss earlier or any generation for that matter.
No.
We still here.
We still here. And I think how I'm taking the points you're making is really to raise that awareness that we are still here, and therefore there are things we can do. You know,
Sorry?
there are things we can do then because we are still here.
Oh, right.
There are things that's what I'm hearing from you. Yes.
Yes. And we can look again. What we have been not doing was looking again. This has been our problem in a way. Not that we failed in terms of whatever we tried to do or fell short, but we haven't looked at it again. You know, and that to me is the big problem here, that we're not looking again and going forward as a result of some re-examination of the information.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. Good.
Right.
Before we get to reparations, though, there's a line in Salt I wanted to ask you. You know, Salt is an amazing book. I just found it is so informative and so, you know, representative of what, you know, what we're talking about now. And you would have written this book in what, 96, I think? But there's a line where you have understand the ground you are walking on. Understand the ground you are walking on. And
that
I
is
want
the
to
line?
ask you, understand the ground you are walking on.
It suddenly doesn't seem like
you wrote that.
right. Understand? You
The
sure
ground?
that is the line?
Yes, I wrote it down.
Who is speaking?
I have to find it now because I wonder if it's anybody speaking or if it's just a line I pulled out of it, you know. That's because
I don't know, because understand the.
Yeah.
Is it a complete sentence, or you know whether it's complete or in its?
It's a complete sentence. I will find it for us before we finish up, you know, because I have the book here with me, and I really should have, you know, bookmarked it, but you know. And I want to ask you before, you know, we're going to get into reparations and what that means for you, you know, and again, your understanding of this. But again, I want to read part that you had so that we could, you know, put it into the discussion. And I think that the school teacher is talking. Are you hearing me clearly?
I'm hearing you, you know.
Yes, okay. So it says, I had not failed to see that the colonial government, Britain, the authorities, however we call them, had had opportunities to make restitution and apology that would restore value and dignity and respect to our community and people. Each time they had backed away out of fear, out of arrogance. The sadness was that the National Party had done no better. I'm leading us into the conversation around reparations with this.
All right. The what of the National Party?
The National Party had done no better.
Right.
This whole idea of,
No. I wanted to get the words exactly again.
Yes. You want me to repeat them?
Yes, please.
Okay. So it is saying, I had not failed to see that the colonial government, Britain, the authorities, however we call them, had had opportunities to make restitution and apology that would restore value and dignity and respect to our community and the people.
Right.
Each time they had backed away out of fear, out of arrogance, the sadness was that the National Party had done no better.
Good.
Yes. So let's talk.
Right. I think that they haven't.
Yeah.
I think that is quite unfortunate because, So first of all, let me establish, and I am saying clearly that they haven't.
They haven't, yes.
They haven't.
And they is the colonial and the National Party. We're looking at both.
Well, in a kind of way, again, it's most interesting because we have different aspects of the National Party, if you want.
Yes.
Addressing things, but I don't know that the National Party has identified with any particular move to deal with restitution, what we say, in relation to dignity, out of, and one has to feel, well, why? If first of all, if that is so, because I think that I imagine some people could contest that, question. It'll be difficult for them to really uphold that objection, if you want,
Yeah.
But I think that the question for me and for us is why. One, and secondly, it's not about being against the party. And I think that this is something that we have to kind of begin to deal with. Is these are the facts. And whether the party might have good intentions, or some individuals have very good intentions, there are things that prevented them from acting in the way they probably hope they might be able to act. I'm saying that to say that we have to look much more sympathetically at the stupidness that we have done or not done, and with much more sympathy and understanding, because it's not just people don't want to look bad or to feel, or not solve some of the problems faced before them, but people always, well, yeah. Yes. So I think that, yes. What do you have to say about that? No.
Well, the thing is, I probably think because of your eldership, you have more sympathy, because you're able to see with through different lenses and different eyes. But sometimes when you sit, we look back and we think, we could have. And again, with that looking back, you see the opportunities where we could have done differently. And again, hindsight is always the better thing, right?
Right. And that's why I was talking about re-examining.
Yes.
You see, if we re-examine things, the same party could re-examine things and come up with a different view.
Yeah.
They're not stuck with one view.
That's it. They're not stuck. Yes. Yeah.
And that is that is part of the problem. It's not that we have not made error or made error, but we act as if this is the only thing in the world that we go on through. After that, we're still here. And we can still do better by re-examining and using the tools that we now have to see what we come up with. And that is kind of like, it seems to me, the problem here. You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, that we're not doing that kind of examination to make a shift. And therefore, when you look at the whole discussion around reparations globally, I'm asking what do you see, because it's about the money, and it's also about the pieces that we're talking about, the loss of the sense of self, that loss of culture. What do you see when you look at reparations globally? What's your take on what's happening? Because I know you've been with the idea of reparations, again, like with Black consciousness, for a long time. So,
right. Well, I think that in some instances that one, it is an easy out, right? Or it could be an easy out for some people who say, well, who know that all the grievances that have accumulated over the years, they say, well, look, I could put it in one little package. Pay me reparation for what you have been doing me for so many hundred of years.
Yeah.
Right? But I think that it also is a broader issue.
Mm-hmm.
There are many things, many things. Who is your neighbor? Well, you see, we become so kind of, I was going to say selfish and that, but let me back up again and ask me the question again.
Yes. So the reparations in the bigger context internationally in terms of what is happening, because again, I'm saying that you would have got there, early in your life then, because if you were dealing with Black consciousness, I'm sure you would have got the reparations from then. So what do you see happening now? What's your take on what's happening?
Well, I think that we have to see right. One of the big ideas that have been presented about Black people, and some people refuse to release, is that they have been slaves.
Yeah.
That the idea that we have been slaves. So this is a condition which is not human. And we know that that is so also because I think in the Virginia Assembly or some assembly, when they were called upon to discover who were these people, these Africans, were called 3/5 of a man. They were said to be 3/5 of a man.
Yeah.
And in a kind of way, okay, and I must remember, you must, right now, remind me about the Walcott question, which I...
Yes, we'll talk about the Walcott
yes.
question, yes.
Yes. So I think that it's very difficult for people to justify, increasingly difficult for people to justify the enslavement of Black people and taking away the land and their labor and stuff like that. It's been very, very, it's not a situation that they could support. So what the world is faced with right now, I think, is either to say you are, well, whether you're a slave or not, this is what I do. You know,
yeah.
You have worked for me and we can't pay you. We're not paying you. But that presents another problem, a kind of moral question. Because if you're not paying it because you're stronger than me, or because you have enough, you can afford to do that. Yes? So I think that we're in a very serious situation. I think that is not an easy question to answer in one sentence, as it were. But I think that, right. That the whole question of reparation has to, we will address it now. And I hope that we will increasingly address, let me say this. You see, I'm saying things, but there's a whole background that I don't know that I have said, you know? Right. All right. I kind of lost track of what I was saying here, but I'll come back to it.
Okay. You'll come back to it. Okay.
Yes.
The idea of reparations.
What is happening in the world? You're saying, when you say in the world at large, what were you thinking?
In terms of the discussions, internationally, with Britain, I think recently with Germany giving back to Namibia, I think it was Namibia, some things, all of these things, seemingly
I see.
making
Right.
it
I got
moving
stuck
along.
for a little while because
Yes.
I think that the question is really posed to Trinidad and to the Caribbean, to these islands and the governments. I am not so sure that the question is one to be posed. I mean, Americans can pose it to America,
Yeah.
but posed to Britain. You see, I think that we have to take responsibility. Governments have to take responsibility. And I don't know if governments in the Caribbean can continue to watch a debate and a discussion like this going on, and they have nothing to say about it.
Yeah.
It's an amazing idea. You know, no. I think that we have to yes, deal with this question.
So we have to deal with it, but you're also talking about governments taking up responsibility for it, for the discussion and for having a say.
Right. I think it would be very useful in a way for the government to be involved in the discussion, because what we will be dealing with is what kind of society do we have? This is not just that some people oppress other people and they have to pay them and stuff. That is a part of it, but that is not the substance of it. Is that we live in here together. What can we do to make sure that you are given justice, fair play, and so on? And how can I be sympathetic or whatever to you, who have taken that stance? We can't just view it in monetary terms. The problem would be because governments have not intervened really. What they're going to do? What is the basis of their non-intervention? What can a government in the Caribbean, whose people have been enslaved for so much time in so many different ways, and what can they yes what is their excuse? What are their reasons? They might have reasons and not excuses. Why is it that they have not said anything? This is a big event. This is something that strikes at the majority of your population in the Caribbean, and you have not said anything about it.
Yes, I think they think they're speaking through the CARICOM reparations plan, seeing you have this. I don't know. I'm just putting that on the table, that they might be speaking through the CARICOM reparations plan and all of the reparations units. Are you hearing me? That they have. So.
Sorry?
Yeah. So I want to ask about, I see we'll be almost at an hour. I will ask you one more question before we take a couple of questions, if there are any in the chat. We have talked about raising the world conscience and consciousness around this. And I like to, so I'm asking you again, to talk to that.
Well, as I say, I think that we have to raise our own conscience first.
Yeah.
That we have been presenting ourselves as multicultural society, right? And assuming that everything is all right, kind of like feeling that we come together and so on. And that has prevented us from really properly asking us to become responsible for each other. Which is really what I think might be an idea, but which is something we can work towards. In a kind of way, sometimes the question would be, what are we working towards? What are we working for? What are we trying to do? And sometimes it is just like we're trying to keep ticking over. And I think that if we deal with some of these questions, as difficult as they appear, that we have enough genius, if you want, in various groupings who could bring some enlightenment on to be on these questions.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
So I think that it's an easy say to say that we're going to help with the conscience of the world. The world is trying its best. You know. I think that the world is proceeding all right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we start with the
Yeah.
self, because one of the things I know you hold
Yes.
firmly to is
When I'm seeing your smile, I'm only seeing your smile. I'm not seeing. Oh,
are you
good.
hearing me? Yes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I know one of
you're
the
back.
things we talk about is the idea of taking responsibility for what we have
Yes.
to do at an individual level,
Right.
you know, taking responsibility. You want to speak to that for a little bit? Who is to do this? And I think I took a note of something you said.
Sorry, I'm not hearing you. Not.
Are you hearing me now? Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I know you said, you know, if this generation doesn't do it, who will?
Let's see. Okay.
I think, are you hearing me now? You're on mute, Mr. Lovelace.
All right.
Great.
They're
Hi,
good?
Sasha. Yes, we're good
Bye-bye.
now. Yes. So are you hearing me?
All right.
Mhm.
Right.
I think I should
I'm hearing
repeat.
you now.
Right. So I should repeat the question for you. I was asking about, we spoke about
I'm
taking
still not.
responsibility.
Lulu, you're going. Oh, right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you
Oh,
hearing me?
yeah. You were talking
Yeah.
about
Taking responsibility and whose
no
generation?
taking
Yes.
responsibility.
In terms of what we have to do, and you know, you had spoken about, if not this generation, which one?
Self-government, all of these things we could tick off that
Yes.
we have achieved, so to speak.
Yes.
And yet the problems remain.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that and I think that the way in which the reparation question is posed is going to right. I'm not seeing you. Yes. Right. We've all these things, but that we have the form to suit the question. I should ask, how do we see the reparation question being posed or being addressed by this generation? Right? I think that right. That we are at the stage where none of the other things appeal to us or appeal to us as solving the problems. That we need to make another step. And you see what I'm trying to
Yes.
get at?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that means that people have to sit down and really seriously think. You're going to not just be moved into passion like that. You know, I think that or being bored by old talk. You know.
Yeah.
I think that you had to be much more concrete and philosophical and understand a whole number of things that have come to play together for us to kind of begin to, you know.
Yes. So we have to get back.
So that's how I.
Yeah, we have to get back to that grounding.
Sorry?
We have to get back to that grounding.
Right.
Yes. I have a question.
We haven't had it easy, you know, really. You know.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. When we think about the intellectuals that have gone through, you know, the revolutionaries, the whole set of stuff, you know. Yes.
Yes. So I have a question for you here from Trevor Allen. You hearing me? What was your intention?
Right.
In writing Salt?
Sorry?
What was your intention in writing Salt? That's a question someone
What
is
was
asking.
my first? What was my first?
What was your intention in writing Salt?
Oh, Salt. Oh.
Yeah.
Right. I think that the whole question of reparation, which is a question raised, I am sure, by people in the past, a lot of people, you know, but that I raised, I was raising the question of reparation, you know, and I thought it was fairly well argued, you know, in the, I can't remember all the arguments, no.
Yes, yeah.
You know, but it was fairly well argued. Yeah, I thought, yes. I can't remember what specifically.
but it's there, and we can go to it and read it and discuss, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I have another question for you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I remember the first time I talked about reparation in public, there was a meeting at the Hilton. I think it was not Best. I think it was, what's his name? Oh boy. Who was a columnist? Ryan, Selwyn Ryan. Right? And I was given this talk, and I had stayed up the whole night trying to work on this, drinking coffee and rum. And I collapsed at this talk, you know, at the Hilton. So that was the first time in recent times then that anybody was talking about reparation.
Reparations. And this would have been when, could you remember? Yeah, this would have been when.
Sorry?
This would have been when.
That would have been, I was living here, no, down the road. So that would be, when it's Sword published, but it
96,
was long
96, I think. It was long before that.
It was long before the publication of Sword.
Okay.
I see a computer. 96 boy na. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yes.
Yeah, 96.
96. Yes. Yeah.
So it might have been about 90 or somewhere around 90 then.
Right. So you were early in the game.
It could be somewhere around that time. I mean, that talk, because the book would have taken me some time because I don't write quickly.
Right.
You know?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
So I think we're over the hour, so I know we have to wrap it up.
Right.
But I want to give you the opportunity to say some final words to us, something you'd want to leave us with, you know, in terms of this journey to reparations, this journey that we're on, this Black consciousness journey that we're on.
Well, right. I think that if we're talking about that, Black consciousness has to be put to some use. One, it has to be validated. It must be a valid position that you can hold in the world, that you're conscious about this. That is probably the biggest battle that is going to have to be fought. For you to be accepting of the idea of Black consciousness as something worthwhile, you know. I think that is very important. So one would be right. And what was the other side of the question?
And also about reparations. What do you think, you know, you'd want to leave with us around the idea of reparations?
Well, there are two things. One is that when we started to talk about reparation, it's a kind of easy acceptance. However, if people go a journey with you, then they will discover it's not so easy. But you don't want to discourage people who think it's an easy acceptance, because they seem to have now come on board about this Black consciousness with by finding something that they could relate to quite easily. But that is not the whole story. You see, I think that we need to find ways in which we can begin to show the whole story, show the human story, because it's much more than There's a whole lot to be done and to be said. But one, as I said, is to be accepted that Black Black consciousness needs to be accepted, and you have to work to. And the other thing is that I think that well, it had to function in all kinds of ways. We had to be kind of observant. I don't know. I was looking at this, you know, just by chance I was reading. This is the Ministry of Education Newsday, Sunday, April 25th. And this is for Trinidad and Tobago children. And we have some redheads, right? And, you know, and the children are not, why do we need to not present our children? You know? And this has serious implications.
Yes.
And then in addition to this, I was looking, there's under this page, which is a job well done, right? The only instrument invented in the 20th century was made right here in Trinidad and Tobago. Yes, it is our national instrument, the steel pan. This led to the invention of the G-pan, which uses high quality steel, plays music in a higher octave or note, and allows the use of fewer pans. And then there's, right, to Trinidad and Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago and Professor Brian Copeland, we say, job well done. No, this is terrible. You take away these people who created the steel pan. It's some little teenagers in Lavantil.
Yeah.
And around the outskirts of Port of Spain. And you refuse to even grant them that. You take it away from them and give somebody who come so many years later on to produce this G-pan, which is nothing, you know.
Yep. And
I find that is frightening. No, this is done. The date of this is April 25th, 2021.
Yep. And that is part of our raising of consciousness and education, and that's part of the healing journey, you know, that we're on. So we have a lot
Right.
more to talk about.
Right.
I
And
know
that has to be one of the things that people have to address.
yeah. It's one of the things we have to address, and that's, I suppose, that's where our responsibility comes in. I know we have to wrap it because I don't want to say we're out of time, but the time is up, and I want to be able to engage you again in another discussion. So I'm going to leave you with the quote we use for this conversation. The tragedy of our time is to have lost the ability to feel loss, the inability of power to rise to its responsibility for human decency. I want to thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Lovelace. I want to thank you for your writing. I want to thank you for your words. I want to thank you for your grace, your sharing, your beauty. We are honored. We thank you.
Right, and thank you very much for having me, you know.
Thank you, and we will have another conversation.
All right, okay. All right, and you keep well. Good?
You keep well too. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, okay, bye-bye.
Nadella is back on.
All right, okay, so right.
Nadella, you're on mute. Nadella is back on to give you some words. Nadella, you're still on mute, yes.
Listen, this has to be one of the most amazing pieces of energy I've experienced online in a very long time. Now that we're living this digital life, Mr. Lovelace sail into the afternoon and say, Black consciousness must be put to use. End of text, right there. You have it. Now it's time to use it. You see, the whole part, that especially that last part about, I mean, the example you brought with the Trinidad Express, and unfortunately, I say this very deliberately, a pullout from the Ministry of Education. So the very people who are sharing information, educating our young people, responsible for the tutelage of our students, our children. And like I say, in one little article, you swipe away not just a portion or a sliver of our history, but the very culture that we rest on. As Mr. Lovelace said, animals follow instinct, humans follow culture. And if this is your documentation or your attempt at documenting our culture, and we're not belittling the GPAN and whatever innovation is around it, but as you said, these were teenage boys who were experiencing oppression in a different kind of way, and this is what they bore out of that, and you just sidelined that. And as he said, this is just a month ago, a month and a half ago, 5 weeks ago.
5 weeks ago.
5 weeks ago, our Ministry of Education.
And I think that's part of our taking responsibility to highlighting those things and ensuring that we ourselves in our work don't do that same erasure.
And not only that, but also
it's a constant vigilance then for that, for us.
Yes, but we also have to hold these people accountable. There are too many times, I mean, and Mr. Lovelace will understand this as a writer. There are things that you read in books and in newspapers that you take as gospel.
Yep.
Because
so that's our responsibility, stepping up to the plate.
Yes. So somebody wrote it, somebody published it, somebody proofread it. So it went through many eyes and many minds to get to us. So that went through many minds and here it is. It's there, published for our children to consume. And nobody said, wait, hold on. You don't think maybe we should put a little context to this? And context is also the name of the game as well. So before we stretch out this time more, because I juiced up right now, I'm very grateful for the conversation. I'm so glad that Earl come and bless up our digital space this afternoon. The magic of the elder. Black consciousness.
And we're going to do another one and others with him. It's important. Yes.
Absolutely. I endorse that. Black consciousness must be put to use, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to our elder, Earl Lovelace, for giving and sharing of your time, your perspectives on Black consciousness and the ideas and ideologies around reparations this evening. Thank you so much for that. Thank you to Miss Erica for facilitating our first conversation in this weekend of reflections on reparations. Thank you to our viewing audience for joining the Black Consciousness Festival's weekend of conversations on reparations. We'd like you all to stay tuned to our exciting schedule. You can get more information on the beautiful people around the world that are collaborating to make this weekend happen. You can get more information on the schedule, on last year's festival, on a little bit on this year's festival. Register for upcoming conversations at our website, theblackconsciousnessfestival.com. Our conversations continue all weekend and our schedule is online. Our next conversation is at 7:30 p.m. AST, Atlantic Standard Time. Voices from Hispanic South America. We absolutely invite you to join us for that one. Thank you again to our Elder Earl, to our Eldris, Erica, and for our grounding conversation. Thank you to the entire team that has pulled off our mini festival, pulled it all together. We wish you all a good evening, a good night, a good afternoon, good morning, wherever in the world you're joining us from, and continue to walk in pride, power, and practice. Put Black consciousness to use. Good evening.